Well, good morning again, Coffee Chat friends and Flat Belly fellow travelers. A few days after our meeting this week, I just wanted to do a little video review of some of the topics we covered and a little presentation that I wanted to give here as well. The topic was about fear. The whole idea of fear and how it affects our quality of life. Some people refer to it as a gift of fear. The topic was actually suggested by somebody in our Coffee Chat Club, Lynn, who talked about a book called The Gift of Fear by a guy named Gavin de Becker. And she actually brought the book, actually not that book, it was another book, I forget the name of it, but it was one of his books as well, along a similar line about fear. And she read a few passages from there about how, so often we see fear as this great boogeyman or something of no value that we had to get rid of completely and so on, expunged from our lives. But his impression was that it's actually a gift. So it would be, if somebody wants to see it from that perspective, it might be something, some of his work might be something that you want to look at. I did take a couple of notes too going into it. There was one suggestion that, a form of fear, which is anxiety, or the manifestation of fear and anxiety, has no value whatsoever. That was somebody's opinion, that it's actually something that we have to overcome. There was a suggestion that by somebody else there that fear can be a comfort zone for many people, and we can see how that could play out. It's easier sometimes to stay in the controlled mode, rather than stepping out to where we want to go, because there can be an uncomforting feeling or a discomfort there. There was mention of being grateful for what fear can tell us. There's just a few comments that I have made in my notebook here. Though I didn't have, there was a lot of chat on this. I mean, we had a large crowd. There's obviously very much of an interest in this. We had probably 50% more people than we normally have out at the Coffee Chat. We had, you should see the chatter on the discussion rather, on the blog, which is the Meetup blog. If you just Google Coffee Chat Saskatoon, you'll find that site. It's a meetup site. And there's, I don't know how many comments on there now, much more than normal. So there's obviously a demand for it. And I did write up something that I didn't actually present there because there was so much wonderful discussion going on that there was just no time for it. So I'll go through it right now in pretty much a reading format and see what you think of this. Maybe I'll put a link on the sites too, so you can actually chime in if you want on the comments about it. So when I start out with, when I look at the word fear in my Macintosh's dictionary, what I find is it's an unpleasant emotion caused by belief that something is dangerous. So we'll bear that in mind and maybe refer back to it. But it's belief that something is dangerous. So obviously with beliefs, they can either be valid or not, right? Now what I would say is, now obviously if there is an unpleasant emotion, because that's part of it, then there can also be pleasant ones, right? Because that's what we compare it with. Things like happiness, joy, fulfillment, and so on. And most of us experience a bit of both throughout our lives. Is it realistic, though, to expect that we're only going to experience the pleasant ones? Probably not, right? Is it realistic that we see only one side of the coin of life? If life here on Earth is dimensional in its diversity, then wouldn't it hold that in order to experience the pleasantries in life, then we will also experience the opposite at times? How else could it be possible that we would even know what pleasantries are if we haven't experienced the unpleasant? Nevertheless, in spite of our desire for the pleasantries, life comes as a package, I would say, in my experience anyways, with all the crap as well, sometimes. And some of that crap we can call fear or anxiety or those sorts of things. So how can we turn these experiences of the crap and the fear and so on around in such a way that we can view them as valuable, perhaps even necessary or inevitable within our journey called life? One thing we could do is we could look at this thing called fear in our own lives and recognize that it has value in the same way that even though we might not want a rainy day, we'd rather the sunny day, but that we can see value in the rainy day and count the blessings for it. A couple of points. First of all, the feeling of fear can certainly motivate us to fear from genuine danger. Remember back to the definition. The belief that something is dangerous. What if that danger is actually genuine? Which would be the example of having to flee a burning building. Apparently, in these cases, the feeling of fear perpetrates the process of maintaining systems not normally operated within our biological system to help us be super strong and super fast. Things like the production of adrenaline and so on. I mean, those of you who are more biological or scientific could tell me actually what goes on there. But logically, we can see that there are things that go on that make us to act and so on differently than we normally do. Number two, unpleasant feelings such as fear, if we acknowledge them as such, can help us to recognize what feelings we do want, and then to calibrate our intentions and actions. Speaker and writer, I believe, Robert Anthony once said that what we want, we fear the most. Now, I don't know if this is always true, but for sure, we can remember back to feelings like what we had for our heartthrobs in high school. Yet all the while, the thought of approaching them brought about the greatest feelings of fear very often. Whatever the example we can come up with, though, certainly we can see that a greater sense of fear, the greater inner calling to have a look at the message that it is providing for us in some way. Look at what you want, man. Look at what you want, woman, is maybe what fear is calling out for us. From this perspective, we can be grateful for fear in helping us on our journeys in life, similar to the way road signs can help us when we're out driving around. Number three, when we take the time to accept the experience of fear for the value it does provide, along the lines of example 1 and example 2, burning building and helping us to be directed, right? We can learn to fess up to them and learn something about ourselves and our capabilities in the process. If we think about this for a moment, and not only think about it, but act upon it as well, when we genuinely acknowledge that the experience of fear is telling us something, and we choose our actions based, at least in part, upon the consideration of what we're being told, not always letting it control us or hold us back, mind you, but just act in some way, then through the process, we experience the other side of the coin in a greater fullness of blossom. Think back to that heartthrob situation, once again, where there was fear, yet we acted, or you acted, in spite of it, by saying hello. That's just one example. Because of this action, if you remember back, the fear either disappeared or subsided for the simple reason that all of a sudden there was the realization there was no real danger. The danger was perceived, right? The overcoming of, or the acting according to the fear prompting, resulted in what seemed like a multiplier of emotions. Because we have moved from the unpleasant to the pleasant, which is a greater sense of emotional travel, you might say, than moving from the neutral to the pleasant. the thing is, in cases like this, we may never get to the neutral. If we wait until there's no more fear, it may never happen. Something to think about, right? A little opinionated comment here, though, as that is always necessary, isn't it? Sometimes, anyways. Even though we can see the benefit in something like the fear emotion, it is not as though we have to go out looking for it. No more than we have to go out looking for rain in the world or snow in Saskatchewan right now, for example, right? It seems as though there is enough natural phenomena in our world experience that seem to come our way. And things, let's face it, like snow in Saskatchewan, which we seem to have very little or no control over. To me, anyways, with this consideration, we're almost better served to work with the experience rather than trying to eliminate all of these things. Somehow, I find that seeing value in phenomena like the rain or the sensation of fear is best to be viewed as having benefit, and therefore worthy of my gratitude rather than being bitched at. Somehow, this attitude seems to remove most of the perceived power that these things have over us. Maxwell Maltz, in his book Psycho-Cybernetics, said along these lines, and I'll read it. Our errors, mistakes, failures, and sometimes even our humiliations were necessary steps in the learning process. However, they were meant to be means to an end, and not an end in themselves. When they have served their purpose, they should be forgotten. If we consciously dwell upon the error, or consciously feel guilty about the error, and keep berating ourselves because of it, then unwittingly the error or failure itself becomes the goal, which is constantly held in imagination and memory. The unhappiest of mortals is that man who insists upon reliving the past over and over in imagination, continually criticizing himself for past mistakes, continually condemning himself for past sins. As we see, that's the end of the quote, by the way, of the sins. As we see, perhaps there is always different angles from which we can look at everything. Fear, like raindrops, seem to get experienced by all of us. So how can we find a way to accept it as part of our nature, realizing that it is there to prompt strengths within us when we are in situations of real danger, so that they can be like street signs, helping to guide us and prompt us to what we want in life. And finally, to help us learn something about ourselves and our capabilities. In other words, to help us see that we are the ones responsible for the quality of our life experiences. May what we've talked about here help us to master one of life's greatest challenges, the gift of fear. Thank you for listening, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye for now.